I normally do not do reactions because, again, like I said in my Thursday stream, they're kind of a slog nowadays. They're just everywhere. They're the low-hanging fruit of YouTube and various other sites. But this one has to do with storytelling and uh, creating a race to solve a continuity error or a logic error in a movie. So I found myself arguing against not this creator's argument because he's just presenting what basically the consensus is about the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi. So let's begin.
Jedi, the characters that aren't Force users, don't really get anything interesting to do until the final battle. And that is the fault of the story. It's no slight to the actors at all. The actors are still doing a great job with what they're given. Most of the time. I mean, one of my
Mostly,
favorite Star Wars moments ever is just this. And let's talk about that final battle. The final
that was
battle
great.
was pretty rad, I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
There are two elements that make it a little dumb though. The first is a complaint you hear a lot about this movie from people who don't like it, and that's the Ewoks. I
Yep.
told you, I'm going to talk about them just a little bit, though. I think the Ewoks are fucking dumb. I know I'm not the only one who thinks this, but I feel like it has to be said. They're stupid. Now, apparently, in the first iterations of the script, the battle was supposed to take place outside of Kashyyyk.
Kashyyyk.
I don't know how it's pronounced.
We saw that in the Star Wars special.
Against the Imperial forces. But George wanted the Allies to be primitive and thought he couldn't really sell the idea after the audience had already seen Chewie fly and use blasters and shit like that.
Yeah.
So then he created the Ewoks. At least that's the excuse that I read. Let me know in the comments if you heard something different, because I'm...
Alright. So, he created a race of people to solve what the audience would perceive as a illogic or a logic incontinuity of how come Chewie is so damn good at keeping the flying hunk of junk that is the Millennium Falcon flying, but the rest of his people are primitive. And of course, the prequels we went back and saw they're not primitive. They were enslaved and built most of Corellia's goddamn SpaceWorks stuff, including the Death Star. Uh, so yeah, they may not communicate very well from our standpoint, but they are in by no means primitive or dumb. Um, and here's the thing: I am guilty of this story writing band-aid of creating a MacGuffin race to save the narrative. So, but here's the thing: the Ewoks, like superficially, are dumb. They basically are like primitive, I hate to use the term, but aboriginal teddy bear people that live on this forest moon, which in and of itself is not anything other than just random par for the course. I've always thought that the Star Wars universe is too heavily populated. I think that it's good. Intelligent species like this are going to be way more sparse in real life, but that's just me. Um, I also like it when you can focus on like a clutch core of races, sort of like Babylon 5, because it makes it a little more the politics a little more intense and a little more heated, because it's more between bitter rivals and begrudging friends than just a bunch of random strangers saying hi. Um, but with the Ewoks, the other problem they often mention is that in real life they would stand no chance against the Imperium stormtroopers that are guarding the facility. Uh, did I have to explain what the Rebel Alliance is analogous to in real life politics? I'm not going to get into the depths of that, but those who know. And if you watched Rogue One and the uncomfortable comparison of a ragtag group of extremists who are against the occupying Imperial force, and that usually it's on a lot of desert planets where they have a heavy influence. Yeah, they also have a weird old religion that is about indoctrinating and breeding warriors that have esoteric weapons. Yeah. Anyway, uncomfortable analogies aside, uh, I see the Rebel Alliance as, I'm sorry, an opportunistic ally engine. What does that mean? That means much like the uncomfortable comparisons to real life organizations, they are totally okay with utilizing a primitive force of locals as a distraction and pretty much a suicide bonsai charge against a force that they know for certain they can't win against. Now, I will give the Ewoks some credit in that they have asymmetrical technology on their side. What does that mean? You see this a lot in storytelling, but it actually happens in real life. When the Predator couldn't see Dutch after smearing mud on him, no one said, "Oh, that's bullshit." He would have seen right through that. It made sense. Mud is cold and wet, and we know that he's seeing heat. It makes sense. Oh, by the way, YouTubers have recreated that with modern thermals. It does work so long as the mud is wet and fresh, as you saw on the scene. Later on, when he's like by the campfire and it's dried, nah, it's gotta be fresh. So he'd have to like re-dunk himself like every 30 minutes or so. But anyway, that's continuity errors for another movie. But that's what I'm saying is that the asymmetry between the technique he's using versus the technology he's meant to defeat. In that movie, no one thought it was outrageous. Excuse me. But for some reason in the battle against the Ewoks, and they're using like military grade booby traps. Like these are advanced booby traps. Like this is the stuff you see like in Vietnam era. They had punji spikes and what I don't think actually, but the logs and the crap against the walkers, like that takes engineering and time and planning. These are not a dumb people. It makes me really wonder like how warlike they were before these people showed up on their planet. Like, did they like annihilate their other surrounding tribes with just a bunch of booby traps? The Aztecs were known to do that. They would raid other people's villages for sacrifices with their leopard and eagle warriors and shit. Um, yeah, and of course, if you remember the companion, I think it was in KOTOR, one of your companions could be an Ewok, and she was a little psychopath because you could understand what she was saying because it was translated. Yeah, the Ewoks are not like the noble savage. They very much are just a primitive, like violent race. Um, so there are good people in every situation, but for the most part, like I said, they are more akin to like uh, the natives you see like in an Indiana Jones movie who shoot first and ask questions later. It's like you're on their sacred land. If they find you, they're going to kill you. That sort of primitive uh, dynamic. It's just that the story needs them to be allies, so they spend all that awkward time in their village, like befriending them and like gaslighting them into believing you're gods. Another thing he brings up. Let me continue
Not
this.
personally convinced by that excuse. If that's the real reason, is that's fucking dumb. The interaction with the Ewoks slows the movie down to a crawl.
Yes, it
Everything with
does.
them is just so weird and boring. 3PO says it's against his programming to pretend to be a deity as an excuse for why he can't tell the Ewoks to let Han and Luke and Chewie go. But then in the next scene, he's sitting on a fucking throne pretending to be a deity. What the hell?
All right, I'm going to defend 3PO on this one, as annoying as a character as he is. Um, this is the laws of robotics versus aftermarket protocol. In other words, he's a protocol droid. He is there to be a translator and like sort of like a footman, sort of like a butler type. You see them everywhere in the Star Wars universe. They are more presentable. They're more humanoid. They have an actual face. Whereas the astromech droids like R2 don't really have a face, and they're kind of, you know, a utilitarian design meant to integrate into a starfighter. They're supposed to just be a plug and play AI pilot, whereas the protocol droids are there to be an assistant and, like I said, sort of a butler slash translator. In that role, they have protocols that are low order but expected to be adhered to. One of which is, don't pretend to be a god when visiting alien planets, because that could cause a diplomatic problem. But when he sees that Luke and Han are in imminent danger of being fucking roasted alive by this angry primitive tribe, he has to break that protocol and go to the Isaac Asimov do no harm to humans. The three laws of robotics. By action or inaction, you cannot allow a human to be harmed. So he has to lie to these people to get them to not murder the humans in his presence. I really would like to know if his protocols would actually extend in reverse to the Ewoks. Would he be okay with like Han and Luke just immediately drawing blasters on these bastards and just murdering the whole village like his father did with the Sand People? It's like I think he would just like protest and be like, "Sirs, that was completely inappropriate." So, but yeah, you see what I'm saying? The programming has low order and high order and unbreakable protocols, and it would have to, similar to the laws of robotics. So he's not sitting there pretending to be a god. They sort of like ushered him into a seat, and then he's realized, oh crap, they're about to roast my friends. I need to do something. So he's like, okay, override diplomatic protocol about not pretending to be a god, and pretend to be a god to get them to not violate the unbreakable law of do not allow harm through action or inaction to come to a human being. That's my defense of CPO. It's as good as I got. It makes sense to me. I don't know what you think.
Why are you guys even here? Don't you guys have something more important to do than fuck around with these teddy bears? Much like The Last Jedi, the characters that aren't Force users don't really get anything.
Okay, but back to asymmetrical technology. You have to remember that stormtrooper armor and their weapons and even their walkers are designed to are allegedly like far more advanced than even our technology. Like they would see Earth as a primitive planet. We use slug throwers, to use in-universe term, projectile weapons. Um, and I think like maybe the best defense we would have against them are like our latest like 6th-gen fighters with like the best missiles. And we wouldn't be able to chase the TIE fighters out of the atmosphere. They got us on that. But once they're in the atmosphere, they have no shielding. And we've seen low-order explosive yields take them out. TIE fighters are kind of disposable. Like, they're not very tough. So I think like an AMRAAM missile would definitely take one out. Or even like a Sidewinder, like an AIM-9X. Definitely. I don't know if they have a heat signature, but the AIM-9X can actually, like the bullet with your name on it, just remember your heat signature. And then relock onto you if you spoof it. I play a lot of air combat sims. So yeah. Maybe our latest laser weapons might be effective against like some of their flying attack drones. Our drones might be a little bit of a threat to the personnel, like the stormtroopers and the officers that aren't wearing armor. But for the most part, they would see us as primitive too. But because of that, you don't give a race that's even more primitive, like the Ewoks, the benefit of the doubt. If you don't give your enemy the benefit of the doubt, they will find a way to screw you. Yeah, Sun Tzu, The Art of Something. Yeah, I'm probably horribly misquoting Sun Tzu, but you know what I'm saying. You have to. One good punch to the temple can kill you. Therefore, saying you're so weak I don't need to block is fucking dumb. Do not do that. Do not give any inch to your enemies, because they will find a weak spot and exploit it. Beyond that, going back to the uncomfortable assertion I made about the Rebel Alliance, like I said, what they're analogous to is par for the course of them befriending a local group of, let's call them partisans, to use as a distraction against the invasive Imperial force that has taken up station on their homeworld, and allowing them to essentially get run off into the woods, potentially mass slaughtered, in order to weaken the defenses of the installation they're trying to actually attack. It is an attack and feint maneuver. It's classic warfare strategy. It's just that you're using useful idiots who are cannon fodder to do that. So I don't think the Ewoks are that bad of an insert to cover a continuity error. I think that they fit into the narrative very well. It's just that the the ridiculous nature of some of Uncle George's races. Like if you made them 6 foot tall and more like Native American, you see what I'm saying? Yeah, so something that is more recognizable as a threat. Yeah, think more like Cochise or like Crazy Horse than you know random caveman teddy bear. I think that the audience would not have that same guttural response of "this is bullshit." And here's the thing: who's to say you couldn't just have a primitive society of humans on this planet who just live, a native primitive lifestyle by choice, and they find the Imperials and the rebels just to be invasive. And it's like we told you thousands of years ago we don't want to live like you. And here you are on our planet, dirtying up our lovely forest moon with your technology. It doesn't have to be Ewoks. Just like it doesn't have to be Jar Jar Binks. You know, no one was expecting Jar Jar Binks, but we got him, and boy was he shoved down our throat, and boy was he kind of racist and kind of off-putting. Like there's this infamous scene of George like explaining to the mocap actor who also voices him, who is a black man, how Jar Jar should walk, and that sort of sauntering walk that he does. It's kind of racist. I'm just gonna say it's and like the reaction he had was like, I see where you're going with this. Like I'm really glad they're not going to be able to see me directly. Is the look on his face? It's like I'm really glad they're going to CGI over me so that my family can't see this. But yeah, it's like the problem with a MacGuffin race like this is that they are a MacGuffin race. They are throwaway, single use. They're like a plastic straw. Once you get rid of them, they're an environmental hazard, and everyone points out, hey, look at this. This is a problem. And it's like, yeah, but it served its purpose. And a lot of people don't like, story writing like that, but sometimes you just have to do it that way. Otherwise, there would be no continuity. Otherwise, you would have a bunch of Wookiees like raiding this outpost for no apparent reason, and you wouldn't understand why are these Wookiees primitive and like Chewie is like really really competent with technology. Is it like he went on Romspringer? He's like his people are like the Amish, but he decided to go out and become worldly. Like what? Yeah, what happened? How did he learn this shit versus his people who are now being presented as like primitive? It doesn't make any damn sense. But I thought the short was like really really good because this is something I've pointed out for a long time, especially with like the indoctrination and I'm sorry the use of the Ewoks by the Rebel Alliance as a distraction. I've always thought that was a little dirty, and it kind of reeked of, like I said, modern politics and modern organizations. But like I said, it all worked out in the end. At the end of the day, the Death Star blew up. Everything's fine. Until Uncle George decides to retcon something, then we could all run around like our hair is on fire. All right, that's it.